Thailand, country located in the center of mainland Southeast Asia. Located wholly within the tropics, Thailand encompasses diverse ecosystems, including the hilly forested areas of the northern frontier, the fertile rice fields of the central plains, the broad plateau of the northeast, and the rugged coasts along the narrow southern peninsula. Thailand. Until the second half of the 20th century, Thailand was primarily an agricultural country, but since the 1960s, increasing numbers of people have moved to Bangkok, the capital, and to other cities. Although the Greater Bangkok metropolitan area remains the preeminent urban center in the country, there are other sizable cities such as Chiang Mai in the north, Nakhon Ratchasima, Korat, Khon Kaen, and Udon Thani in the northeast, Pattaya in the southeast, and Hat Yai in the far south. Siam, as Thailand was officially called until 1939, was never brought under European colonial domination. Independent Siam was ruled by an absolute monarchy until a revolution there in 1932. Since that time, Thailand has been a constitutional monarchy, and all subsequent constitutions have provided for an elected parliament. Political authority, however, has often been held by the military, which has taken power through coups. During the last 2 decades of the 20th century and the first decade of the 21st, parliamentary democracy steadily gained wider popular support. Although a crisis emerged in 2006, when the military, aligned with the monarchy, overthrew an elected government, new parliamentary elections were held as promised by the interim government in 2007. Thailand, which has about the same land area as Spain or France, consists of 2 broad geographic areas, a larger main section in the north and a smaller peninsular extension in the south. The main body of the country is surrounded by Myanmar, Burma to the west, Laos to the north and east, Cambodia to the southeast, and the Gulf of Thailand to the south. Peninsular Thailand stretches southward from the southwestern corner of the country along the eastern edge of the Malay Peninsula. Myanmar extends along the western portion of the peninsula as far as the Isthmus of Kra, after which Thailand occupies the entire peninsula until reaching its southern border with Malaysia at roughly latitude 6° N. Thailand's landscapes vary from low mountains to fertile alluvial plains dotted with rice paddies to sandy beaches set amid the equatorial latitudes of the Asian monsoons. The country is divided into 5 distinct physiographic regions: the folded mountains in the north and west, the Korat Plateau in the northeast, the Khao Phraya River Basin in the center, the maritime corner of the central region in the southeast, and the long, slender peninsular portion in the southwest. The northern mountains, the southeastern continuation of the uplift process that formed the Himalayas, extend southward along the Thai-Myanmar border and reach as far south as northern Malaysia. Long granitic ridges were formed when great masses of molten rock forced their way upward through the older sedimentary strata. Peaks average about 5,200 feet by sea. Count Peaks 100 meters above sea level. Mount Inthanon at 8,481 feet, 2,585 meters, the highest in the country, is in northwestern Thailand, near the historical city of Chiang Mai. The city is overshadowed by Mount Suthep, site of a famous Buddhist shrine and the Royal Summer Palace. Some of the rugged limestone hills contain caves from which remains of prehistoric humans have been excavated. The northeast is coterminous with the Korat Plateau, a vast tableland bounded by the Mekong River on the north and east. It was formed by uplifting along 2 perpendicularly arranged crustal faults, one trending north-south in the west and the other east-west in the south. As a result, The underlying sedimentary rocks were tilted rather than uniformly uplifted. This tilting created ranges of low hills and mountains along the western and southern edges of the plateau. The Phetchabun and Dangrek, Thai Dong Rak Mountains, respectively. The escarpments of these uplands overlook the plain of the Khao Phraya Basin to the west and the Cambodian plain to the south. Surface elevations on the Korat Plateau range from about 650 feet, 200 meters, in the northwest to some 300 feet, 90 meters, in the southeast. The terrain is rolling, and the hilltops generally slope to the southeast in conformity with the tilt of the land. Situated between the northern and western mountain ranges and the Korat Plateau is the extensive Chao Phraya River Basin, which is the cultural and economic heartland of Thailand. The region, sometimes called the Central Plain, consists of two portions: heavily dissected rolling plains in the north and the flat, low-lying floodplain and delta of the Chao Phraya in the south. It was formed by the outwash of immense quantities of sediment brought down from the mountains by the Khao Phraya's tributaries, which produced vast fan-shaped alluvial deposits. The generally rolling countryside of the southeast has high hills in the center and along the eastern boundary with Cambodia. Notable peaks are Mount Kayo, which rises to 2,614 feet, 797 meters, and Mount Soi Dao, which attains a height of 5,471 feet, 1,668 meters. The hills, reaching nearly to the sea, create a markedly indented coastline fringed with many islands. With their long stretches of sandy beach, such coastal towns as Chonburi and Rayong and some of the islands have become popular year-round tourist resorts.
Thailand is a country of forests, shrub-studded grasslands, and swampy wetlands dotted with lotuses and water lilies. Since the mid-20th century, the total land area covered by forests has declined from more than half to less than one-third. Forest clearing for agriculture, including for tree plantations, excessive logging, and poor management are the main causes of this decline. Forests consist largely of such hardwoods as teak and timber and resin-producing trees of the Dipterocarpaceae family. As elsewhere in Southeast Asia, bamboo, palms, rattan, and many kinds of ferns are common. Where forests have been logged and not replanted, a secondary growth of grasses and shrubs has sprung up that often limits land use for farming. Lotuses and water lilies dot most ponds and swamps throughout the country. The Thai people traditionally used water buffalo, oxen, horses, and elephants for plowing and harrowing fields, transporting goods and people, and moving heavy loads. By the 1980s, however, draft animals had been replaced by machines, and, except in remote areas of the country, animals used for transportation had been replaced by motorcycles, trucks, cars, and buses. The demand for work elephants almost completely disappeared after the logging ban in 1989, and domesticated elephants were absorbed into the tourist industry. Rapid deforestation coupled with a marked rise in demand for exotic animals has been detrimental to wildlife. Rhinoceroses and tapirs, once found in many parts of the country, have all but disappeared, as have herds of wild elephants. A similar fate has befallen gibbons and some species of monkeys and birds. Although serious efforts have been made to prevent the illegal sale of endangered species, they have met with only limited success. Like other conservation legislation, which has a long history in Thailand, the laws have been difficult to implement and enforce.
When the modern political boundaries of Thailand were fixed at the end of the 19th century and in the first part of the 20th, the country included peoples of diverse cultural, linguistic, and religious backgrounds. This diversity is characteristic of most Southeast Asian countries, where shifting political boundaries have done little to impede the centuries-long migrations of people. Thailand's central position on the mainland has made it a crossroads for these population movements. Although the vast majority of the inhabitants of Thailand are descendants of speakers of Thai languages who have been dominant in the area since the late 13th century, The population also includes numerous non-Thai peoples. Members of the largest indigenous minority speak a dialect of Malay. Other significant indigenous minorities include speakers of Mon, Khmer, and other Mon-Khmer languages of the Austroasiatic family. In the uplands of western and northern Thailand are found peoples who speak languages belonging to several other language families. Thailand is also home to large numbers of immigrants and their descendants, most from China but some from South Asia. Most members of indigenous and immigrant communities in Thailand identify strongly with Thai national culture and are speakers of Thai.
The great alluvial deposits in the river valleys contain the most fertile soils in Thailand and are replenished annually, with sediment washed down by rivers swollen with the annual monsoon rains. Chief among these areas is the delta floodplain of the Chao Phraya, but the relatively flat basins in the northern mountains, scattered lands along the Mun and Chai rivers on the Korat Plateau, and much of the coast also have rich alluvial soils. Soils elsewhere tend to be relatively infertile, highly leached laterites. Near the Mekong, a high salt content in some soils limits crop production, although salt deposits there are mined commercially. Thailand is drained largely by two river systems, the Chao Phraya in the west and the Mekong in the east. Three major rivers in the northern mountains, from west to east: the Ping and its tributary, the Wang, the Yom, and the Nan flow generally south through narrow valleys to the plains, and then merge to form the Chao Phraya, Thailand's principal river. The delta floodplain of the Chao Phraya is braided into numerous small channels and is joined by other rivers, notably the Pa Sak Az. The river flows toward its mouth in the Gulf of Thailand. The flooding of the flat delta in the wet season is an asset to rice cultivation, although higher ground on the extreme eastern and western edges of the plain requires irrigation. The entire delta was once part of the Gulf of Thailand, but over time the sediment carried down from the north has filled it in. Such silting is a continuing obstruction to river navigation, but it also extends the river's mouth into the Gulf by several feet each year.
The rivers of the Korat Plateau flow generally southeastward and empty into the Mekong. Floodwaters from these rivers have been important sources of water for rice production in the area. However, the floods have long been unpredictable in terms of both quantity and frequency, and flooding problems have worsened as more land has been deforested and put under cultivation. The region also has a high water table that contains mostly brackish, unpotable water. Much of the Mekong itself, which lies on the boundary between Thailand and Laos, is either studded with islands or broken up by impassable rapids. The southeast and the peninsula are drained by short streams and rivers. In the southeast, the rivers in the north flow into the Chao Phraya Delta, while those in the west and south run directly into the sea, where they have built up small alluvial basins and deltas along the coast. The mouths of the rivers along the southern coast consist of tidal flats and mangrove swamps. Nearly all the rivers on the peninsula drain into the Gulf of Thailand. Between the 1950s and 80s, a number of dams were built, mainly in the north and northeast of the country, that have improved flood control and made it possible to increase the production of hydroelectric power and to expand agricultural areas that can be irrigated.